I look forward to sharing the incredible successes of our military, achieved in a matter of weeks. President Trump, unlike other presidents, has had the courage to ensure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, and he's ironclad in that. We have the best negotiator in the world driving that deal. The biggest challenge, the biggest adversary we face at this point are the reckless, feckless, and defeatist words of congressional Democrats and some Republicans.
How sad. How sad, first of all, that a child is allowed to hold that position, an immature child that doesn't even understand. There's so many things he doesn't understand. But the first thing he doesn't understand is that the people that are on that committee are members of the Armed Services Committee. And as a former member of the Armed Services Committee, I can tell you most of those people have military bases in their district. Most of those people represent the men and women in uniform that fight for this country, that are deployed across the world, that are deployed across the Middle East. And their first concern is the safety and the security of those soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard members. That's their concern. And this guy acts like a punk, a little punk, saying that those members of the Armed Services Committee, who mind you, are actually fulfilling the oath before country and God that they gave and following the orders, not of one president, but of our founding fathers in the Constitution in Article 1, to have oversight over an administration, any administration, just like we did with the Clinton administration, just like we did with the Bush administration, just like Republicans did with the Obama administration. That is what they take an oath to do. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, just said that these Article 1 representatives were a greater adversary to America than Iran's Revolutionary Guard, than Iran's mullahs, a greater adversary than all of those groups, the terrorist proxy groups that are trying to kill our soldiers every day. Isn't it pretty remarkable? Pretty remarkable that we've been lectured by MAGA world over the past week that you can't say anything. You can't say, oh, the president's acting like an authoritarian because you may get him killed. Oh, the president is actually, he's acting like a fascist, or he's using fascist rhetoric. So you can't say that. You can't say that because you might cause people to shoot him, as if the two go together. And here you have Pete Hegseth saying that members of Congress doing their constitutional job are greater threats than the Revolutionary Guard. And listen, just for the record, as Jonathan Chait pointed out in The Atlantic a couple of days ago, Donald Trump regularly calls his opponents that he disagrees with communists, traitors, people who need to be shot in the face. So it's just such nonsense. It really is. And I understand hacks doing it. I understand hacks. But when the Wall Street Journal editorial page and the National Review goes down that tired line, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So here we have, Willie, a Secretary of Defense that says the greatest adversary to U.S. troops right now, not the Revolutionary Guard, but members of Congress who want to know, I don't know, basic things. How much money have we spent there? We finally got the answer yesterday. What actually are the reasons why we went to war? Because he really still didn't give us a clearly defined answer. He did say, and I'm glad he said it, there can never be a nuclear Iran. So if he decides, and this administration decides to cut and run, while Iran still has nuclear weapons, then, well, I guess by his own definition, there's a failure. But another thing happened yesterday, and I swear to God, it's just, I don't know if they're children or they think that everybody that follows them are children. But we heard once again yesterday them kind of juggling the ball, saying, we destroyed Iran's nuclear capability. Oh, okay, great. We have to go to war because Iran's 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. Wait, but you destroyed it a year ago. Now you're saying they're 2 weeks away? And we had the same sort of tap dance yesterday. We can't leave until their nuclear program's destroyed. Oh, the president destroyed their nuclear program. So this whole thing, again, it's an embarrassing exercise. And I do mean this. He's not only... It's not only embarrassing for the United States of America. I keep saying this. It's embarrassing for the Republican Party. It's embarrassing for the President of the United States, who deserves and needs somebody better running the Pentagon than this child who embarrasses Donald Trump every time he goes out and talks.
Yeah, these performances that we see from Pete Hegseth once a week or so are designed to humor the president, to please the president, to get a pat on the back from the president. But as you say, they're not helping the president in this war effort at all. And any basic question, the ones you just laid out, how much does the war cost? Did you not see the consequences of war, like the Strait of Hormuz potentially being closed, which every former military leader we've had on this show said that's one of the first questions you ask. When the subject of Iran comes up, the next question is, what about the Strait of Hormuz? The cost of gas is now $4.23. All of these consequences, all of these outcomes, did you not consider them? And the response to that from Secretary Hegseth yesterday is, why do you hate America? Why are you rooting against the war? You're the actual bad guys. If you deign to criticize or ask questions about this war, you're rooting against America. That's just not how it works here in America, Jonathan Lemire. But President Trump seems to like Secretary Hegseth, likes his combativeness, likes the way he performs. He's sort of adopted the language of Donald Trump. And so there he sits at the head of the Pentagon as this war drags on, frankly, with no end in sight.
Secretary Hegseth, frankly, doesn't have that many allies or friends within the White House, but he has the only one that matters. President Trump likes him, loves the performative outrage that we see in those briefings at the Pentagon and likely yesterday. It's worth highlighting this. We just showed what Hegseth said, that the biggest adversary we face at this point are the reckless, feckless, and defeatist words of congressional Democrats. A few moments later, when General Kane gave his opening remarks, he included a line about General George C. Marshall's commitment to a nonpartisan military, saying, quote, that remains a constant standard and something I borrow from often. So General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying what you should say there. The military is not supposed to be political. Yes. Secretary Hegseth not doing the same. And we, as Willie just said, there are real ramifications for this war. There are no negotiations planned. The Strait of Hormuz is shut. Yes, U.S. officials believe the blockade is working, but we have a long way to go. And overnight, oil prices surged, hitting a fresh wartime high, Joe and Mika. Right. And right now, the Trump administration is looking for a way out without an obvious answer.
Well, let's commend General Kane, first of all, for using as his North Star General George Marshall, who never voted in an election. As his father never voted in an election, he always stayed away from politics, did everything he could to do that. He was a soldier first. And so when you see this petulant display, I can say, people can say, oh, Donald Trump likes it. I don't know. He didn't like it when Pam Bondi did it. And yesterday reminded me of Pam Bondi's performance, the worst performance on Capitol Hill, I think, certainly I've ever seen before the Armed Services Committee. When you actually tell Republicans and Democrats that they are a greater adversary than the Revolutionary Guard, that they are a greater adversary than the mullahs, the ayatollahs in Iran, that they're a greater adversary than the government that has actually run a state that's the epicenter of terrorism since 1979. And here's what is lost for President Trump. Oil prices are going up. If you actually had a grown-up go in there and explain, listen, we understand oil prices are going up and we feel terrible for the American people. This is what we're calculating, though. Mm-hmm. We need to keep the blockade in place because we understand we've degraded their military targets. Our military is the best in the world. They can't do any better than they've done, and we're just so damn proud of them. But at this point, the real pressure point with the Iranians is now economic. We've done everything we can do militarily, and we've done it well, and we're so proud of that. But now our military is going to be used to choke their economy off. And that, at the end of the day, is what's going to bring them to the negotiating table. So we can have a safe Iran. We can have a safe region. We can have a safe world free from a nuclear Iran. If the right person had said that for the Trump administration, people would understand, okay, yes, oil's going to go up for the next week or two. But on the other side of it, you have the UAE proving what great allies they are, getting out of OPEC, because they say they want to be reliable partners to the United States. So there was a way to do that.
Yeah.
But because he decided to go full Bondi, and
that was full Bondi.
Yeah. Willie, I think we all know this. You never go full Bondi, right? You never go full Bondi.
No.
It never works. And he went full Bondi. Man, you don't go full Bondi.
You don't do it.
He went full Bondi.
You've just cited a new term, I think, that's going to be used throughout the briefings that we've seen from Secretary Hegseth. By the way, your point about the nuclear program and ambitions is an important one, because despite what he was saying yesterday, in June of 2025, after Operation Midnight Hammer, Secretary Hegseth said, quote, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. It's over. That was 10 months ago. And now the defense of the war, which is,
strike up the band.
It's warranted if there's still nuclear material in the nuclear program. He says, no. We've got to stop. We might have wiped out their capabilities, but they still have the ambition. That's why we have to keep fighting in Iran.
Let's look at the big picture. With us, author and staff writer for The Atlantic, Anne Applebaum, and decorated combat veteran and former commander of U.S. Army Europe, retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Herdling, who we are happy to say is joining us now as a military analyst.
And that is a reason to strike up the band. We're going to get on to Ukraine in a minute, General, because so much is going on right now. We are literally seeing history move before our eyes. It's extraordinary what the Ukrainians are doing every day. But I want to first have you comment on what we saw yesterday. It's too easy, quite frankly, to continue criticizing this child's performance. What I'd like you to tell our viewers is what should a mature SecDef in the middle of the war said to Congress yesterday? What would you have liked to hear?
Yeah, Joe, it's a great question, because first of all, we have to review what this hearing was supposed to be all about. The center point of this hearing was to defend a $1.45 trillion request for a bump up in the Defense Department budget. I didn't hear a whole lot of discussion about the budget at all. That's a 40% increase in what they were initially given by the NDAA. So that kind of fell by the wayside. And the second thing I'd say, having testified before members of Congress myself, the disrespect that was shown by the Secretary of Defense to the organization that has First Amendment powers of basically questioning different department heads about what they're doing in an oversight role was just, to me, beyond the pale. There was smirks, there was bad body language, there was arguments, there was over-talking. And again, having myself testified before Congress, that's just not a way to win the approval of the budget that you're trying to submit. There's 50%, almost 50% of the Congress now that just sees the secretary as someone who is going to bluster, who's going to talk about things, who's going to overtalk and not answer questions. So in and of itself, even some of the answers he was giving in terms of the cost of the war, trying to answer good questions about potential war crimes that were committed, responsibility and accountability of him and the force. There is no one questioning the actions of the U.S. military. They have been magnificent in what they have been asked to do. I have not seen a single person say that, the military actions have been bad. What the question is what's the end state? what comes after the military, what hits the next sets of decisive points in Iran, according to the theorist Jomini, and how do you get to the center of gravity to get them at the negotiating table? That's all by the wayside right now, and it's just confusing to me how he can, to use your term, go full Bondi and expect any kind of coordination with the members of Congress who give him the money that he needs for the Defense Department.
He went full Bondi. You never go full Bondi. Let me say this in a way that the president may understand, and I'm dead serious. Not only is it disrespectful, I know the president has no problem with that, but I've sat through hundreds of these hearings on the Armed Services Committee. It's ineffective. It's ineffective.
It seemed desperate,
it's ineffective to everybody. Republicans and Democrats that may be split on other issues will come together afterwards, and they'll stick it to him every chance they get moving forward. It's ineffective. It's like using a 60 wedge, when you're driving on a par 5 or taking out a driver when you're 20 yards from the green. Nobody does it. There's a reason they don't do it. It's ineffective. So Pete Hegseth went full Bondi, and it's only going to hurt him with the committee. It's only going to hurt him with the Congress. It's only going to hurt him with this war effort.
So